how quickly should you progress in your technical career and what the upsides or potential downsides might be if you progress too fast. Is there such a thing as progressing too fast? Is that frowned upon? So there's plenty of pros and cons to both, and we wanted to get into the details and maybe even have panelists share their own journeys.
So I'll just add a little context to the whole thing. I was basically interviewed with Gergely on the Pragmatic Engineer, and my career ladder specifically got taken out of context, and people started comparing their own career ladders to my trajectory. And I just want to say a couple of things about that, and then I guess you guys can jump in too, and we can discuss everything that Kier wanted to bring up. But basically, the first few years of my career weren't fast at all. Basically, I don't think going to senior engineer, my career really took off once I joined this startup. If you happen to join a startup that ends up turning into a rocket very quickly, then I think they're going to ask you to do a lot of things that you wouldn't normally have to do under normal conditions. Hire a lot of people really fast, work insane hours, maybe work twice as much as the next person. And so the first 4 or 5 years of my career, by the time I joined Jet, I was basically a senior engineer, individual contributor. But in the very short time frame from there, I obviously moved up to director. And then by the time Walmart acquired us, I was a senior director running a portion of pharmacy for Walmart. And yeah, that was all. That last part was really fast. And that's usually the part that takes people the longest. But I got very lucky. And so I think people took that part out of context. And yeah, but I think that can happen if you end up joining a place that ends up moving really fast and they ask you to do a lot of crazy work. So I don't know if somebody wants to chime in on their trajectory and if they think that's too fast or whatever. Go ahead, Tiago.
Yeah, I have a few things to say about that. I would say I don't think that 5 years to become a senior engineer is on the fastest side that I have seen. I feel though that from engineering manager to senior director of engineering, you went really quickly. But that is also not crazy. I have seen folks going from engineering manager to CTO. And I would say you surf the wave, right? I would say that's another thing that if the company is growing fast, you went along with it. And that is a thing that I was thinking this morning, and I actually tweeted about this, is there is a cost of saying no to things early, especially at the beginning of a company. And I think you said a lot of yeses, right, Louis? And you took crazy projects, I'm pretty sure, during Jet. And you put a lot of hours, a lot of energy into that for what, 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, basically until Jet was acquired in late 2016, but I was still running the Jet teams. Walmart kept Jet running for a while they were merging teams into other portions of the company. I was still running the Jet teams probably 2019 probably, and then flipped over. So yeah, Tiago, it was basically, I'd say maybe 4-year time span, maybe 3-year time span to go from engineering manager to senior director.
And I think this is something we touched on a previous episode, that is, the earlier you get in a startup, the more context you have, and the quicker are you able to navigate the org structure and get shit done in a way that even someone more senior joining the company a year later would struggle. And because you had that context and you're able to deliver a lot of things, folks would start to pile up more things on Louis. Okay, Louis can deliver. Let's see how much he can handle. Let's give challenge. And if you're able to deliver on the promises and the company is growing and you were like almost being able to keep at the same speed, I would say is a lot easier to rely on someone that is inside rather than bringing someone that has years of experience but has no context of the company, of the architecture, of the engineers. So I think that is a way that I see to accelerate. And I now compare it to my own trajectory. I went from senior engineer to director of engineering in maybe 3 years and a half at Amex. But I actually, the moment I decided to leave, I had a VP offer on the table that I decided to leave on the table to join Apple. But the key for me was that I joined when the mobile engineering team at Amex was in the early days. We had 20 people. And I followed the move from, let's say, we used to have like an international app and a US app, and we combined into a global app. So we changed the architecture like crazy. We tripled the size of the team. We had Singapore, London, New York, and Phoenix. And I was there. I did 150 interviews in 2018. I was the person that did more interviews across the engineering chapter in the company. And that allowed me to get that engineering director offer because I was like surfing the wave and yeah, we're growing. And like, And my VP was pushing a lot on me, giving me a lot of stuff. And I was stressed, but I was able to handle the load. I was able to deliver the crazy project that got assigned to me. And I could have had a similar trajectory as you had, Louis. I would say going from, let's say, I joined as a senior engineer, 2 months in, my engineering manager left. I was invited in. Then, like a year and a half later, like going on that crazy hiring trajectory, I got invited to be director because there was so many engineers coming up and a lot of people didn't have context on. And I was able to onboard people, like onboard interns and talk to product. And I think that is the easiest way to grow. And I think it's a lot harder if you are in an environment that's going sideways, right? If you are on a company that's stable, is not growing like crazy, is going to take a lot longer because you're not going to get the opportunities. You're not going to have that crazy, exponential growth. Vic.
Sure. So moving fast up a career ladder involves a lot of luck and randomness, in my opinion. I went from being a senior engineer to an engineering manager in 2 years, and then I was a director of engineering a year later. We were growing fast, and I effectively served as quote-unquote CTO for the next 4 years, which is not really a position at the company. And I say quote-unquote because these titles are meaningless across companies of different sizes. But my responsibility at a startup our size was basically that I manage managers, and my tenure at the company gave me greater context than anybody else. At rapidly growing startups, if you're someone who doesn't say no, you basically become the person who's a catch-all for everything, and they crown you CTO and they pay you to make up for your nebulous big workload. This is, of course, much more difficult at established companies with established processes where you have to go through maybe training and or demonstrate that you actually know how to manage people, or they're just not growing as much, so you have to be there for a lot longer. This is me just saying that everyone's path is different and wild and crazy. If it's possible for someone to look at my trajectory and say, that's crazy, how did this person go from being a senior engineer to a director in so many years? It's context, right? Context matters. Mithra?
Yeah, to that point, I feel like something people miss a lot is that a title means something vastly different at every company. And it's really about your scope and what you do. I'm interviewing right now, actually, and people will ask, what are you looking for? And I have to tell them the kind of work I'm looking for. And sometimes it's a senior manager, sometimes it's a director, sometimes it's a VP. And it all depends on the company, the size, and the state that it's in right now and what they need. So I feel like when people see a career ladder like, oh, you became a senior director in 2 years, that's not fair. They're thinking about a senior director at their company or a situation there. And yeah, maybe that's a very different role that has very different expectations. Tiago or Louis mentioned how some companies, they require you to go, especially big companies, through a lot of steps, and it's almost like a tenured process. Whereas in startups, if you're there and right timing, like we've all talked about, you naturally have to take on so many of these responsibilities that you wouldn't even have the opportunity to at that level in a different company, in a big company. I know at my time at Amazon, it was really, you don't get promoted to SD2 until you've been there for at least a year and a half. And it's like very special circumstances if you get promoted before then. So it really is so dependent on your company and the size and the stage, I would say. Kayer?